When my wife's cheating shattered our marriage, the story of love, betrayal, and hard choices. Hi there, I'm Daniel, and I'm 34. I've worked in tech for over a decade, and it's been my dream job. I love getting started on new projects and solving tricky problems. It's so exciting. Being part of a team that's pushing boundaries is what keeps me going strong. But little did I know, my career had a dark side. I was married to Emily for 7 years, and she was my soulmate. We met in college, and our differences made us perfect for each other. She was like my rock, and I thought she balanced me out. Then, as I climbed the corporate ladder, our time together started to shrink. My work got more intense, and I started neglecting my personal life. That caused some drama in our relationship, and eventually we broke up. I get it, I was totally focused on work and neglected my family. But I've learned to better balance my personal and professional life. I still love what I do, but I value my relationships even more now. I didn't mean to neglect my family, it just happened. Tech is an all-consuming industry, especially when you're working at a startup. Sometimes days blend into nights, and weeks go by in a blur of meetings and deadlines. My wife Emily understood it at first, but over time, the strain of work started to take a toll on our relationship. Before, we had long conversations, planned spontaneous weekends away, just enjoyed each other's company. But now, those times seem like a distant dream. Instead of having dinner together, I come home exhausted and barely able to keep my eyes open. My wife is on the couch, scrolling through her phone, waiting for me to join her. I don't have the energy anymore. The best I can do is say hi before collapsing into bed. I kept telling myself that things would get better, that once I got to a certain point in my career, I'd have more time for everything. We'd go on vacations again, we'd connect, but life had other plans. Anyway, one evening I got home early, which was rare. I was excited because I wanted to surprise Emily. I'd picked up some Thai food from her favorite restaurant. I wanted to spend some quality time with her, but when I got home, it was weirdly quiet. I called out for her, but there was no answer. Maybe she was out, so I went upstairs to change. I walked into the bedroom and noticed her phone was buzzing with notifications on the bed. Normally, I wouldn't think twice about going through someone else's messages, but for some reason, I picked it up. That's when the world started to crumble for me. There were texts from Jake, a name I didn't recognize. My heart started racing as I opened up the messages. It wasn't just friendly talk, it was intimate and passionate. There were plans and details of their time together that I never knew about. I kept scrolling, my hands trembling, reading about all the moments they had when I was working. It turned out that Emily had been seeing someone behind my back for a while. The depth and length of their conversations hinted that it wasn't a random fling. It was more serious than I thought. I dropped my phone, and my mind was racing with thoughts. How could this have happened? I wondered. How did I miss all the signs? The late nights, the change in her behavior, all those excuses, they all made sense to me now. I'd been so wrapped up in work that I'd lost sight of what really mattered. Work had taken over my life, and in doing so, I let her go. But I wasn't prepared for what happened next. I sat on the edge of the bed, looking at Emily's phone. Man, my head was spinning, my heart was racing. How did this happen? I thought if I worked hard, if I took care of us, everything would be okay. But now here I am, with proof that my wife is in love with someone else. It felt like hours before I heard the door open. It was Emily home. I wanted to confront her, ask for answers, yell, scream, but I was stuck. My thoughts were all jumbled up with betrayal, sadness, confusion. Daniel, she called downstairs. You home? Her voice was calm, like nothing had changed. I heard her footsteps on the stairs and quickly put the phone down. Should I say anything? Act like I didn't see it? Maybe there's an explanation. Deep down, I know there isn't. When she walked into the bedroom, I saw her smile. It used to light up my world, but now it felt empty. Hey, didn't expect you home so early, she said, sitting next to me. She brushed my arm with her hand, but I moved away. I got some Thai food, I said, my voice shaking. She smiled, not noticing the tension. That's nice. Thought we could have a night in. How many nights had I missed when she was with someone else? I felt sick. I couldn't hold it back. "Who's Jake?" I blurted out. Her face drained of color, her smile gone. She shook her head, trying to play it off. "Jake? What do you mean?" I stood up. "I saw the texts, Emily. I know." My mouth opened, but nothing came out. I just stared at you, a mix of panic and guilt on my face. "Daniel, Just tell me the truth," I interrupted, my voice firm. "How long has this been going on?" You looked down at your hands, and for a second, I thought you might lie. After a long pause, you sighed and finally said, 6 months. 6 months? I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Half a year of my life, and I hadn't known my wife was falling for someone else. All those nights she came home late, I thought everything was fine. Turns out, she was sneaking around. "Is it serious?" I asked, not sure if I wanted to hear the answer. You hesitated. "I don't know, Daniel. It wasn't supposed to happen. You were always working away, and I was lonely. So it's all my fault, huh?" I said, a bit incredulously. "You cheated on me just because I was too busy working?" "No, it's not just that," she said, tears starting to well up in her eyes. "It's been a lot of things. We stopped communicating. We grew apart. I didn't know how to get through to you anymore. I wanted to scream and yell at her for hurting me, for destroying our relationship, but her words echoed my own thoughts. Somewhere in the middle, I had also lost her. I was so busy building my career that I forgot to build a relationship with her. "What do you want to do now?" I asked, feeling kinda lost. I wasn't even sure anymore what I wanted. Part of me wanted to fight for us, for her, but another part of me was just too hurt and broken to see any point. Emily looked at me, her eyes filled with sadness and guilt. "I don't know, Dan. I love you, but I also love him." There was the truth that I had been afraid of. She was caught between two guys, and I was one of them. But after everything that had happened, I just couldn't be the guy she wanted anymore. "I need some space," I said, voice quiet. "Can we just take some time apart?" She understood and nodded. "Sure, I'll stay with my sis for a few days," and with that, she left. The girl I had planned my whole life with, who I thought I'd grow old with, she was suddenly a stranger. As I sat in our empty home, it all started to sink in what had happened. I had lost it, not with Jake, maybe, but I'd lost it before then. And now I had to decide what to do next. I was in a bit of a daze for the next few days. I couldn't sleep or eat. My mind was just replaying everything that Emily said. 6 months! She'd been with Jake for half a year, and I'd been so blind. So wrapped up in work and my own life that I didn't notice our marriage was crumbling. Without her, the house felt emptier than ever. Her favorite blanket was still on the couch. Her art supplies were piled in the living room corner, and even her scent lingered in the air. But she was gone, taken a bag, and gone to her sister's place, leaving me with the wreckage of our marriage. What was I supposed to do? Part of me wanted to call, try to fix it, promise to change. But part of me also felt angry and resentful. She'd cheated, betrayed, and now it was all on me to pick up the pieces. Work was a total blur. I just couldn't focus or concentrate on anything else. All I could think about was her and him. Every time I pictured them together, it felt like a knife stabbing me in the gut. Who was this dude? What did he have that I didn't? Was it just because I worked too much? Or was there something deeper going on between us that couldn't be fixed by taking some time off? Never in my life had I felt so lost. So I did what anyone would do in that situation. I turned to my best buddy, Eric. We'd known each other since college, and he's the kind of person who always knows what to say to make things seem less bad. We haven't seen each other much lately because I've been so busy, but if anyone could help me sort out this mess, it's him. "Man, I'm not even sure what to say," Eric said after I told him the whole story. "We were at a bar, the place we used to hang out at in the old days. I mean, like 6 months? That's crazy. Tell me about it," I said, looking down at my drink. I didn't even see it coming. I thought we were just going through a tough time, but I didn't think she'd do that. Eric nodded, taking a sip of his beer. "It's not your fault, man. You were trying to do what was best for you both. Sometimes people just change, and sometimes they do stupid stuff because of it. Yeah, but what if it was me who changed? I wasn't there for her. I was always working, always at the office. Maybe if I'd been around more. No, Eric interrupted. Don't blame yourself. She chose to do what she did. She could have talked to you about how she was feeling. She didn't have to sneak around. I nodded, not totally convinced, though. It was easy to point the finger at her, but I knew deep down that I wasn't totally innocent in this. Our marriage was falling apart long before Jake came along. I just wasn't paying attention. So, what next? Eric asked, sitting back in his seat. You think you're going to try to work it out? I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to, but another part feels like it's over. How can you come back from this? Eric shrugged. I don't know, man. I've never been in a relationship. But if I had to give advice, don't rush into anything. Take some time to figure out what you really want. Maybe talk to a counselor or something. This is a lot to handle on your own. I hadn't even thought about therapy. The idea of talking about my feelings with a stranger wasn't appealing, but maybe he was right. It wasn't working out for me on my own, and talking to someone could help me sort through this mess in my mind. That night, I was lying in bed, thinking about everything. I just didn't know what to do. Should I try to save my marriage or let it go? Could I forgive her if she ever came back? Maybe it was the end and this was my chance to move on. I was up all night thinking about it, but I still didn't have any answers. In the end, I knew I needed to make a decision. The next day, I got a text from Emily. She wanted to talk. My heart started racing as I read her message. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. I quickly replied, yeah, when? She replied right away, tonight. I'll come over after work. I was so stressed out the whole day, thinking about all the possible scenarios. Would she apologize? Would she ask for forgiveness? Or even worse, would she just tell me that it's over? I didn't know what I wanted her to say, and it scared me more than anything. Then, when she finally came home that night, everything seemed to be moving in slow motion. She looked different, tired, maybe nervous, definitely. She sat across from me at the table, not looking at me for what seemed like forever, before she finally spoke. I've been thinking a lot, she said softly, her voice hardly above a whisper. And I realized that I made a huge mistake. My heart sank. Here we go. The moment of truth. I shouldn't have done what I did behind your back, she continued. I should have talked to you when I felt lonely, but I didn't, and I'm so sorry, Dan. Her voice cracked, and for the first time, I saw genuine emotion in her eyes. It wasn't just words. She meant what she was saying. But would it be enough? I love you, she continued, her voice shaking. And I don't want to lose you. I understand if you can't forgive me. I stared at her, my head spinning with everything that happened between us. Could I really forgive her? Was I even willing to try? It felt like the weight of the world was on my shoulders, knowing that whatever I said could change everything. I was just sitting there, staring at Emily. Her words were still ringing in my ears. I don't want to lose you, she said. But hadn't I already lost her, or was it partly my fault too? The silence was so heavy, and I was trying to process everything that had happened. She was sitting there waiting for me to say something, her eyes full of hope and guilt. I didn't know what to say, though. Daniel, she finally asked in a small voice. I don't know, I mumbled, my words coming slowly. I just don't know if I can forgive this, you know? I don't think I can move past it. She nodded sadly, her face dropping a bit. I understand, she said. I wouldn't expect you to just forgive me, but I'm willing to try. I want us to get back to how we were. I want you to be happy again. I could hear the honesty in her voice, but that didn't take away the hurt. The picture of her with Jake was burned into my brain. I couldn't just switch off my feelings, and there was still that part of me that was angry and hurt. That part that wanted to know why him, why not me. I'm sorry I wasn't there for you, I said, my voice shaking a little. I'm so sorry I let work get in the way, that I missed what was happening with us. But it doesn't change what happened. You made a choice, and you chose him. She looked down, tears forming in her eyes. I know, she whispered, and I hate myself every day for it. I should have talked to you, been honest, but I was selfish. My loneliness got in the way. I wanted to believe her, just think it was a mistake, like a moment of weakness or something. But 6 months isn't just some moment. It's a whole other thing, like another relationship going on right under my nose when I was trying to keep things together. I don't even know who you are anymore, I said, feeling the pain well up. You were the person I thought I could trust, and now I just don't know if I can trust you ever again." She started to cry, but didn't try to argue her case. She knew there wasn't anything she could say that would make it better, that would take away the hurt. "I understand," she whispered. "If you want me to leave, I will. I won't fight you." There was so much sadness in her voice, and for a second, I felt guilty. But then I remembered all the texts, all the lies, all the nights I was at work while she was with someone else. She'd already left me in every way that matters. "Just give me some time," I said, my voice shaking. "I need to think about what I want, what we want." She nodded slowly, brushing away her tears. "Okay, I'll give you as much time as you need, Daniel. But I'm not giving up on us. I love you, and I want to make it work." Those words felt empty now, like they didn't mean anything. If she truly loved me, then why did she do what she did? Was it so easy to just walk away after 7 years? All these questions swirled around in my head, but I was too tired to ask them. Emily got up and grabbed her bag, heading towards the door. "I'll stay with my sister for now," she said softly. "Call me if you need to talk, or if there's anything I can do." I just nodded, not able to trust myself to speak. She paused for a second like she wanted to say more, but then she opened the door and left, leaving me alone in our silent home. As the door closed behind me, a tsunami of emotions crashed over me. Rage, sorrow, confusion, they all hit at once. I wanted to yell, punch something, do anything to ease the pain, but instead, I sat there frozen. Over the next few days, I buried myself in work to distract myself, but it didn't work. Every time I sat at my desk, thoughts of Emily and Jake flooded my mind. All the nights I worked late, thinking we were building our future together while she was somewhere else. I wanted to call her, try to work things out, but each time I picked up the phone, I hesitated. I wasn't sure if I was ready to speak with her again, if I could handle what she had to say. A few days later, I decided to listen to Eric's advice and see a therapist. I needed some clarity about what I wanted to do and what my next step should be. It was uncomfortable at first, sitting in that sterile office and talking to a complete stranger about the details of my personal life. But after a while, I started to feel better. The therapist helped me realize that while Emily had hurt me, there had been problems in our marriage before Jake even came into the picture. We had both ignored those problems for too long, and they had caused a rift between us. For the next few weeks, I spent time reflecting and thinking about what I really wanted. Should I try to save my marriage, or should I just move on? Emily texted me a couple of times, asking how I was doing and if we could talk, but I always postponed it. I wasn't sure if I was ready to talk to her yet. In fact, I wasn't even sure if I would ever be. And then, one night, I was just sitting in the living room staring at that empty space where Emily's art supplies usually were when my phone started buzzing. It was from Emily. "Hey, miss you," the text said. "Ready to talk when you're ready." Man, my heart was racing as I stared at my phone. I knew we had to have this talk, one way or the other. I was dreading it, but I also knew I couldn't keep avoiding it. So I took a deep breath and typed back, "Let's talk." Emily showed up that night. As soon as she walked in the door, you could see the stress all over her face. Those eyes of hers, which were usually so familiar, seemed distant and far away, like the weight of everything that had happened was permanently changing her. I didn't know if I had the strength to go through with this conversation, but we had to. There was no way around it. We sat at the kitchen table, the place where so many big talks in our relationship had taken place. Only this time it felt different. There was an awkward silence between us, filled with unspoken thoughts, broken trust, and the uncertainty of our future. "I've been thinking a lot," I started, my voice quiet but sincere. "About us, about what happened." Emily just nodded, her gaze fixed on me, waiting to hear what I had to say. She didn't interrupt or rush me. For once she seemed willing to hear me out, really hear what I had to say. "To be honest," I continued, "what you did, it really hurt me. I don't know if I'll ever be able to fully get over it." Her face tensed, and she looked down at her hands, nervously fiddling with them. I could see she wanted to say sorry again, to plead for my forgiveness. But she held back, letting me finish. "But," I said, leaning closer to her, "I also realized that I wasn't perfect either. I got so caught up in work that I let our relationship drift. I thought as long as I provided for us, everything would be okay. I didn't pay enough attention to you and our marriage." She looked at me with tears in her eyes. "Daniel, I'm so sorry." "I know," I replied softly. "I know you mean it, and I want to believe you, but it's not easy. I've been thinking if we can move forward from here, if we can build what we had back again." A spark of hope lit up in her eyes at that. My heart ached, because I wasn't sure if I could give her the answer she needed. "To be honest," I said, my voice wavering slightly, "I don't think we can just go back to how things were before. Too much has happened, you know? I've changed, and so have you." Her expression fell, and she looked like she was going to crumple right there in front of me. "So, what does that mean?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Are you saying we're over?" I sighed. This was the hard part, the thing I'd been dreading. I guess, maybe. I mean, the way things used to be. Anyway, we can't undo what happened. And to be honest, I don't know if I'll ever see you the same again after what you did. Now her tears were flowing freely, and she buried her face in her hands, sobbing quietly. It broke my heart seeing her like that, but there was no way around it. This wasn't something we could just ignore. "I wish things could be different," I continued, my voice a soft whisper. "I really do. But after thinking about it for a while, I think it's best for both of us to move on." Emily looked at me, tears streaming down her face. "But we can try, can't we? We can go to therapy, work through our issues. I'll do anything, Dan. Please." "I know," I said, feeling a heavy weight of regret. "And I want to believe you. But the reality is, I just don't think I have the strength left to keep fighting." She started sobbing louder, and it was hard for me to hold back my emotions too. This was hard for both of us, after all. Leaving someone you've been with for so long, someone you thought was going to be there forever, is one of the toughest things in the world. "I'll always care about you, Em," I said. "But we're not the people we were when we met. Maybe it's okay. Maybe we should both find our own ways, even if that means not going together." She stayed quiet for a while, wiping away her tears and trying to get herself together. I could see the hurt in her eyes, but also understanding, reluctant acceptance of the situation we were in. "I never wanted to hurt you," she whispered. "I didn't mean for this to happen." "I know," I replied, "but it did. Now we have to deal with it." We sat in silence for what seemed like forever. I thought about all the good times we'd had, the road trips, late-night chats, dreams for our future. They seemed like a different lifetime, a memory from a past version of ourselves. Eventually, Emily stood up, moving slowly and heavily. "So, this is it then?" I nodded, my throat tight. "Guess so." She gathered her stuff and, for the last time, headed for the door. Before she stepped out, she turned around to look at me once more. "I'll always love you, Dan. You know that, right?" "I'll love you forever too," I said, my words catching in my throat. But sometimes, love just isn't enough. And then she was gone. The door clicked shut, and I was left standing there, alone in our silent house. It didn't feel like a win, or like we had finally resolved things. It just felt empty. I knew I'd made the right call, but it still hurt. I had no idea where we were going, or how long it'd take to recover. But for the first time in ages, I felt something, a tiny spark of hope. I was hoping that maybe, just maybe, I could start over. Not the same life as I had with Emily, but a new one. One where I could leave the past behind and figure out who I am without her. It won't be easy, and it won't happen overnight. But for the first time, I believe it's possible. That's all I need. If you like such stories, then be sure to subscribe to the channel. It will be the biggest support for me.